Welcome to the Level Up Artist Podcast. We are your hosts, Adriana May and
Jackie Sanders. We are two art professionals sharing forward the advice and business lessons we have learned along our creative journeys.
We also talk to artists, leaders, and art professionals to demystify the creative process and discover new ways to succeed as a career-minded artist.
So if you find value in these conversations, please go ahead and subscribe. This will help other creatives like you find a podcast, and you'll be notified when we drop a new episode every Tuesday.
So on today's podcast episode, we have a special guest, Jamaica Gilmer. She describes herself as a relentless hope architect, love that, curator, photographer, strategist, and storyteller. Jamaica is the founder of The Beautiful Project, an arts collective that centers Black women and girls as the authorities over their own narratives. For close to 20 years, she has raised her camera and galvanized Black women and girls to strategically declare their hopes and dreams for themselves and each other. Jamaica uses images to document the breadth and vision and sight of revolutionaries and organizers. As a graduate of Howard University's Johnson School of Communications, she is a highly influential speaker, sharing insight across the nation as a guest lecturer, keynote, and panelist. So welcome, Jamaica, to the podcast.
Thanks. It's good to be here. This is fun.
Awesome. We are so excited to have you. I know we met a few months ago. You actually came to Art Space, and you and Adriana were both on a panel discussion that I was able to attend, and a lot of other artists found so much value in. And we'll be diving into some of your work experience there, sharing what you shared on the panel as well as other ideas. But first of all, if someone has not seen your work before, how would you describe it to someone?
Oh, what a fun question. Okay. So one, it's wonderful to be here. This is a whole lot of fun. We had a really good time on that panel. So it was a very sweet invitation. So I'm really glad about that. How would I describe my work for someone who has not seen it? It's really emotional and really intense. And you can lock in. It's typically people. And if there are any objects there to support the story of the person or people in my images. But my images kind of tend to open you up and kind of invite you to lock in with the emotion that's in the photograph.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. That definitely communicates well in your work. And it really is, it's such engaging work that it's not exactly photography that you just pass by in a room without thinking about it. It really draws you in and makes you stop in your tracks and really experience the piece, which I think is really a mark of very successful artwork, is almost forcing that engagement and conversation in a very raw and authentic way, which is absolutely beautiful.
Yeah. And I remember, I think probably the first time I saw your work, to be honest, was during the Fresh exhibition. You had a large piece on it, which was, I don't know, I found it interesting because that was you, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So you as the photographer, you were flipping the script in a way. You know how they say a lot of times, I know this is, stereotype perhaps, but a lot of times the photographer, you never see them, you just see who they choose to show you. But instead you flipped around that script and you looked like, I mean, it was beautiful, like meaningful portrait, but you looked vulnerable and also strong, but you were the subject. Did you take that photo? Did you set the tripod on a timer and use yourself as a subject?
I did. It was very stressful because I love being behind the camera. But during quarantine, and really the first couple of years of the pandemic, because we kept that bubble alive. But my family was like, my family is very, very, very generous when it comes to being in front of my camera. Mm-hmm. But once the pandemic hit, everybody was tired of everything. And they were just like, it was a lot of, and so I was like, okay. So I started doing self-portraits, and then the opportunity came to submit to The Beautiful Project. There was a show my colleague was curating that I was not, and she invited us to do self-portraits for an exhibit that actually was at the North Carolina Museum of Art.
Nice.
And so I just kind of like deep dive into that like emotional, vulnerable space that I typically invite other humans to be in front of my camera. And I love it. I love drawing you in because I'm ultimately like kind of like, hey, show me your soul. No,
Yeah.
seriously, I'd like to see it. Right. And so to put myself in that position, it was that I really appreciate that you being able to see that I looked vulnerable and strong, and there was a lot of intensity around it. And my closest friends, like, they had to talk to me to let that image out in the world. And so that was fun. But I had to, I ultimately got in front of the camera and playing around with self-portraits because image wise, I was all I had. Um,
Right.
and there are a lot of like photographers who do self-portrait that I just really respect. So I thought I'd give it a shot. And that's what I ended up with.
Yeah. No, that's actually perfect. Well, perfect segue into that. Not necessarily about your self-portrait, but maybe in general, in terms of your creative process. How do you mentioned like tell people show me your soul, but I just want to ask you, like, how do you identify and capture meaningful moments? Like what are you looking for in order to capture that? Like what's that process like? You sit down and just like talk with people for a little bit, or you tell them a story and try to see what their reaction is and go from there? Like how does that work? I don't know. I'm intrigued.
It's, it, you know, it's real. It's kind of really emotional. There's a couple of things that I'll do that can happen in any order. So it's not the same thing every time. But I'm really good at, like, I'm very good at feeling other people's vibe and emotion and energy. And just like, I can pick up on it very quick and I can settle into a place of safety for other people, with and without the camera. And so with the camera, um, I just kind of, I just let myself drop to an emotional wavelength where I can see clearly and be in touch with what's happening in the room and what's happening with the person. And so we kind of, it kind of becomes this emotional dance of like the person I'm photographing, them testing out, like, for real? Like, we're good. Okay. So we're gonna, okay. Yeah. I mean, and it just like, if you had to put, incomplete sentences to it, that's how it looks and feels, where they're starting to respond to what they're like. Am I feeling it? Yeah, I am. I mean, okay, yeah. Oh, yes. And so it is very, I very much so adore, I describe it like writing emotions, like the emotional waves, like in a room, like a roller coaster. But I can just do that. I can just flow with people really well. And
Mm.
then once I bring the camera up, it really can become like it's almost like a dance, right? Where we're making some choices together, and they're allowing me to see, um, who they are. And I'll take the time to let them know I saw it and let them know I'm grateful. And so sometimes I think something that I often and always do, when people like really let me in, is like I'll get the shot, but then I'll just move the camera and just like lock eyes, just like,
Mm.
okay, oh, so we're here. And they're like, oh, you know. So that's when like there's portraits. Um, but then even when I'm documenting rooms and spaces with multiple people, I'm generally just looking for the emotion.
I love that. And I think especially you serving as that guide, and as much of as the camera is in that space, obviously documenting whether a room or a photograph, it really is that connection between you and the subject matter. So
Yeah.
finding the importance of those moments to like pull the technology away and just like reignite that connection of that relationship. And I'm sure that from a validation standpoint, if your subject matter's maybe a little uncomfortable or not sure, as you were saying, it is reassuring for them of, okay, like we're doing this, we're in it. Just like any type of dance, like any type of sport, it's like, all right, let's go. Let's keep riding this wave together. And we don't know
Yeah.
where it's going to go, but let's
Yeah,
ride this wave of emotion and see what happens at the end.
that's right. And do it
That's
in a way that doesn't leave um, uh, the person or people I'm photographing or me um flailing in the motion, like, you know what I mean?
right.
Like, you don't like, that's not how I work, but instead, embracing the motion as a partner.
There needs
Right,
some
exactly.
grounding of some sort, essentially.
Yeah. You're not doing two solo dances next to each other. It's a waltz that needs that connection. And okay, let's step this way a little bit. And then they react. And then they step one way and they react.
That's right.
I love that. And that's like such the beauty of your art form. But looking at, of course, you're also a very well-versed businesswoman, being able to grow your creative process and serving your community through your art. I'm curious from the business side of your art career, do you find it difficult to transition from that artistic creative phase to the business side of being an artist? And what does that look like for you?
That's looked different over the years.
Mhm.
I find I find business really intriguing, almost like a game.
Yeah.
And I like the game of it. I like winning. I like figuring out how to make something work for me and for the people that I care about. I also think business sucks. Like it's also exhausting and like unless I feel like doing the numbers, I don't want to do this. I'd rather take a picture.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so I am kind of like I just kind of work on those two. I'm aware I'm those two extremes, right? So I call those two extremes into a middle, so that I can sleep at night. But
Yeah.
it has been it. Sometimes I really need it. Like it's nice to like if I'm in editing mode, like I'm taking all the photographs, I'm in editing mode, and I know that I can just get to this place where I'm kind of like everything's bad. This sucks. What am I doing? Oh my god, I suck. Right? And this is what happens in my head
Right.
after I get to like photograph 20, and I'm just like, why do I even try? Right? I know
Yeah.
I need to do something else. Like I just
Yeah.
need to take a second, take a moment. And sometimes it's like looking at the business side. And then my brain is like, man, you're so good at this. You're so smart. You're so successful. Look at you go. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh my God, I'm so great. Like, and then I'm having this conversation with myself around this like visceral, intensely negative self-talk and this like wonderful affirmation of like my intellect and my business prowess and all these things, right? So then I can circle back, right? So I do a lot of, as you can see, observation of myself. But business is useful for me. The business side has been useful for me as a break around my creative process. So I kind of they intertwine a lot for me. I dance.
Yeah.
But while
Have you-
you're in the creative process itself, the business side is outside the door. Like you don't let it into the photography session, right? Okay, perfect.
Oh, no, right.
I like hearing that
right.
because that has a lot of parallels with us that are doing other types of visual art. It's
Yeah.
hard for us to basically tell the inner critic and or the business side, you need to step outside. Like right now we're in creative mode. Sure.
Right.
Like
Right.
stay out, we'll deal with you later. And obviously it does start crawling back in, but
Yeah.
at least try to make that distinction. So I love that even though your medium is different than ours, of course, in the way it's being created and the outfit itself, that you also have some of the same struggles and are also trying to make that division as well. So
Yeah.
thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you almost have to like compartmentalize it in a way, like you were saying. But have you recognized for you and how your workflow is or how your creative process is that you've been able to find some type of routine that you may be able to share? Or as you were saying, doing a lot of self-observation, do you find that you work better on the business side at one part of the day and better on the creative side another, or doing it more large chunks, like weeks at a time, doing one part of the business versus the other? Like, what does your routine look like with that?
My routine is always grounded in a map.
Okay.
So that gives me the flexibility to do what I want to do outside of that, right? So like I map out my full hope and dream for any project that I'm working on. And I kind of go back, if I had to guess, I go back quarterly, at least monthly sometimes, to just see if I'm adding or taking anything away from like that macro, like start to finish. Like, who do I want to photograph ideally? How many photographs? What time of day? What season? Indoors or outdoors? Am I putting this in publications? Am I going for a museum? Am I going for an exhibition in a center? Am I going after press? Am I going to do a social media thing? Like I do the whole map. And then I'm able to manage routine wise what the priorities are. Right. So sometimes I can do that. I did my whole map, and it's time for me to edit some photos. Right. But I'm freaked out. I don't want to. So I'm just like, oh God, but what about the press? And so I have to, I have my map. So I could do the self-talk of like, hey, so there's no show yet. There's no press for you. Okay. You're going to have to edit these images. Okay. Get some coffee. We can do this. We're great at this. We're great at this. Let's go. Right. And so that's what it looks like. So sometimes it's like, like right now I'm working on a couple of things, and I have to, I can't do lunch as much. I can't get up for breakfast as much. There's just days where my friends are like, where you at? And I'm like, see you Sunday. Because these days I have to crunch some things out in order to be able to hit my marks. And then there's other days where like I said, because of that map holds my flexibility. It holds the creative process and the business process to support the creative process. So that gives me a lot of, I can be really agile about like, what, today I'm going to, do the write-up, right? Which is, cool. It can be fun, but it's not where I'm like the happiest. I'm happiest with images. Whereas other, like I just know because I'm just in there. And also like, I love a checklist. Oh God. Oh my God. So that map has, the boxes to click.
Mm-hmm.
So something to say, routine wise, it always starts with a map. My map is pretty. I want to look at my map. It's pictures and everything.
What do you use?
What is that called? Melanote.
What is it?
Well, we haven't heard of that before.
No.
You're welcome.
Yeah, you may have just changed our entire lives. I'm in the very
Possibly.
much like paper and pen map, which is not very efficient, but I have it up on my studio wall.
I do that too.
Yeah. It's always a blend of it, a digital checklist, and then okay, like map out the project. But I absolutely love that. So tell us about, real quick on that one platform, what do you like about it and how long have you been using it for? We'll definitely be linking it in the show notes so our guests can check it out too.
So I have been using it for, I think I'm at a couple of years. I started using it during the pandemic. And when I was running Beautiful, I supported / some would say agitated my team by implementing Asana. Asana is that one. Really, really useful and not pretty at all, but is really, really useful. And so for myself, I needed what is a gorgeous version that would help me with my workflow, but that works with just my brain. Like I don't have to think about any implications for other people. It's very much so just about how I work. And so you can build a lot out of their template. So everyone's will look different because you can build out what you need for your boards. And mine function as like my entire creative life. I organize on this board, and then then it dials into a project.
That's awesome. And I'm sure it's so satisfying to have it all laid out, have it beautiful, but then also, as you were saying, to be able to check off those boxes as you go. And you're like, if you get a little behind schedule, you're like, nope, I'm tunnel visioning because I need to be here by this day to meet this long-term timeline. You're speaking our language of reverse engineer those goals. What's the end state? What are those milestones I need to do? And I think that's one thing, both as creatives, but even just entrepreneurs and business owners in general, it's hard to be almost that larger strategic mind that's planning out a project as well as the person executing it. Because in larger corporations, those are two different roles, right? Where you have the people doing the day-to-day work, but you have the larger strategy, the larger timelines. So you have to then almost be accountable to yourself of what your previous self established as your goals, and then say, okay, previous self, I got it. I'm checking these off. I'm doing it. Still having flexibility if absolutely needed, but also, as you're saying, having that clarity and focus to honor your commitments that you made to yourself. And you're like, we're going to make this happen. We're bringing it to life, and just check it all off.
Right. Yeah. And I really love it. I love both those parts.
Yeah. I like too that you call it a map. I know a lot of creatives, if you say scheduling or time blocking. They just run for the hills, you know, like a cat that just got sprayed with water, just gone. So I like that because I'm always trying to like figure out too what the better balance is. So I use a lot of dry erase board and Google Calendar, you know, like it's the combo of the two. So I'm definitely going to be looking that one up and see how it fits in. But with that said, you know, diving back into some of the business bits, right? Like the logistics of it. So as a professional photographer, how do your income streams fit together? Because I know you mentioned some of it was like working towards exhibitions, some of it was towards press, which may or may not include a paycheck, might be like more promotion for your business. Some of it might be like, you know, maybe you're working with an institution or organization. So how do you fit all those things together?
I've done it in multiple ways. One, it's important to recognize one of the ways was I didn't, right? Like it did, it was not, there was no money, right? But I was doing, you know, my family would point out like I was just happiest when I was, you know, I had a camera, like that was a part of my life, right? So there was that part. I started doing photography. Well, I've done photography most of my life. Friends and family would say it's true. I didn't start to study it till undergrad.
Okay.
And so I would say from when I started to study it to now, photography could be something I was doing with no paycheck for the photography. So I think like when I moved to Durham about 18, 19 years ago. And I was a courier. And I was just working in 35 millimeter film, black and white in the darkroom, right?
Nice.
Love it.
Old school.
Oh yeah, I love that so much.
Yeah.
And then I started to freelance. And so what was wonderful about that, there was always, you know, for people to get to where they are, I think a lot of people have the experiences I'm about to describe. But for me, one of the things that I've always loved as a young Black woman coming up, there were just always these Black women that were randomly looking out for me, right? And it would happen at really random times where somebody would just pull me aside and be like, I see you, I believe in you, and try to do something to get my weight up around photography and around making it a business. And so I remember I had one client early on who said, just kind of took it out. It was almost like a mob movie. She said, Jamaica, stay for a moment. And everyone left out. I just finished documenting this really amazing room. She took a piece of paper out of her desk and she slid it over her desk. And she said, this is the pricing sheet for what the photographers we typically go with charge. And then she stayed like this. My prices were not high enough, you know? And I said, I think I still have it like as a memento, like in a filing cabinet that tortures my husband. But things like that. So I started to realize like, okay, what questions should I ask? What research was actually on the internet at the time? And I started collecting information and started to allow myself to be in community with other professionals. So I started getting my rates to places where I could pay bills, right? So it went from being responsive to someone being like, oh, that's what you charge, to kind of like a yes.
Yes, it is.
Would you like a contract or no? Okay, cool. You know what I mean? So I began to escalate because of the research. So as a freelancer, it was a lot of fun and super discouraging because it took me a minute to get paid what I needed in order to contribute to my household the way I wanted to.
Yeah. And did you have to do things like weddings or things that you were like, this is not really my jam, but it'll pay the bills? So, yeah.
Well, I did weddings because I felt like at the time it was my jam.
Okay.
And I just was like, I really like love. But then I realized kind of like, oh man, you know, some of these family members suck. You know what I mean? Like, who are you talking to? Why are you telling me to eat while standing? Like, I'm gonna sit down in this chair. You know what I'm saying? So like, there were dynamics around like people dynamics and being a service provider, which is what, you know, I have been in some level of my career in every section of my career. But it also like I started to document like kind of human tendency towards me as a service provider and what it looked like and how it was being treated, like when I showed up. So I did weddings for a while and then didn't like the infrastructure that I would, with the like of the businesses I was trying to partner with and things like that. So I started doing weddings on my own, as opposed to like with other companies. And then realized that there were like more professional wedding photographers who like were like, they adored it. I loved love. I didn't love weddings. I just
it
love.
makes sense from that emotion that you connect to. You're like, weddings are a very typically heightened emotion state from the love of the bride and groom, but also family coming together. As you were saying, like there's a little bit of drama sometimes.
Yeah, people are booed up. Like there's a situation at weddings, you know, it's so fun.
It is.
Yeah.
But also I don't want to talk to you for long about your shot list. I do not want to kind of doula you through this process. And I just realized like, oh, okay, weddings aren't for me. Like you deserve better. I'm going to give you great images, but on the way there, I don't really want to talk anymore. So, yes,
yeah, I'll give you a great product, but like, just trust that I'm going to do that. We're not going to have these like consultation meetings. You're not
going to have one solid one.
Yeah.
We're going to enjoy each other. And then I will see you at the situation. Like we're good. So that's not, so then weddings weren't for me. But I did weddings. I did a lot of, I think I did some family portraits. But then I was coming up with both my partner and our really close friends. We were kind of, we were coming up together in business. And they started a consulting firm. And I kind of, without this like label, kind of became their house photographer. Nice. So I began to travel. So, they just would call friends and colleagues and all the things. And so we start traveling around the country, whether conferences or profiles. And that's where I started to feel like, oh, this though. Mm-hmm. And so that was a lot of fun. That was, that was great. That was a great paycheck. It was a great paycheck, but also.
You weren't quite there yet. The soul part wasn't quite there yet.
Well, that soul part, that was there. It was there. It felt good. But, as I was freelancing, my passion for the Beautiful Project was just growing and growing and growing and growing and growing. And so I began to do both. When the Beautiful Project wasn't always a job, but when it became a job, I was doing both. And then I stopped taking freelance gigs and just did the Beautiful Project. So I had a paycheck through my job running Beautiful.
Perfect.
And through grants. So there was no paycheck, some paycheck, and then paycheck through the organization.
That's perfect.
That's amazing.
How about like fast forward to today? What do your income streams look like?
Oh my gosh, there aren't any today. That's only exciting for me, and I know it's a huge place of deserved luxury and real privilege, because I left. I found it beautiful in 2004, and we went through, so many iterations of business model and structure, and got to a place where we became a nonprofit. And through my tenure there, I think during the pandemic, I realized like, oh, I did what I came to do. I think I'm done, and wanted to hand it over to the lovely lady there. And so I went on sabbatical I left in December. What year is this? I left December 20. What year is this? 22?
22.
Okay. So I left December 21.
Okay.
And I have been on sabbatical, which was lovely, a paid sabbatical from January to the end of June.
Perfect.
And I'm fresh off sabbatical. And so family-wise, professionally, we're considering this my like practice year. Around like, how do I work? When do I work? Coffee shop? No coffee shop. These chairs are bad. Like, you know what I mean?
You're like, do I need white noise to cancel out, or do I need total silence? Do I want to be outside?
Do I want to do arts admin contracts? Do I just want photography fellowships? I
So
think
it's
I
like
just want to be an artist.
reinventing time. We're catching
Yes.
you for this, which this is only a couple months after your sabbatical ended.
Right.
This is when you're reinventing yourself as a brand, if we can say it that way, right?
Yeah.
As
Oh
a
yeah.
business. Now you're like, wait a minute. Now you're bringing out the giant map and going, here are all the different things I've done. What do I want to do again? And what do I want those income streams to be? So the short answer to that is to be determined.
Exactly.
All
Because
right.
there's opportunities in front of me, but I just, it's kind of like, Jamaica,
That's really
really,
good.
what is it? How do you want to spend your time now? How do you
Perfect.
want to spend your time? So I'm in a dream mode and doing some really fun mapping.
Perfect.
That's
Best part.
amazing. That's so fun. And I feel like that is like everything feels so possible in this phase, which is very exciting. But when it comes to seeking out those opportunities, what kind of things are you exploring, maybe from a more practical standpoint? And where do you find those opportunities? Or at least where have you in the past as well? Are they more so you creating opportunities to happen and pitching it to other people? Or do you kind of respond to different job boards or people wanting those services? What does that kind of look like? Or is that still part of what you're assessing too?
So I am really good at, I enjoy strategy. I enjoy thinking about impact, and I am good at tracking what my effect is. And so, like right now, you know, I'm working on an exhibit that I'm really excited about. And I know that that exhibit will further that exhibit, primarily I um, started that photography series as a way to work through not being able to see my father in quarantine. And I wanted to also be able to um, add to the canon of images and stories about how Black elders were experiencing life during quarantine. There were some very real realities that Black elders were experiencing that were true, but I just felt like the way reporting was happening, it was just only about their pain in a way that did not also center their humanity. And so the series is with this group of amazing elders. And so I started that, heart passion project, right? It wasn't something that was to pay me, right? But so while there's the process and the human exchange, the fulfillment we get, right? So there's that, boom. On the arts and business side and what it looks like to pursue opportunities to get to your question, I work in a way that often allows my work and my impact to speak for me. It makes the conversation shorter. It makes the possibility wider, right? So I always keep a section of space to try to do really what my heart is telling me to do. I go big. And so I have to watch myself. So there's a way it's kind of like, I want to do this, blah, blah, blah. But then I'm just kind of like, I'm going to do this one thing, but there's 20 tentacles. It's like, girl, you got 20 tentacle time. This is not a paid gig. You know what I mean? So I have to watch myself. That's why the map is useful, right? So at this point in my career, I am aware of what my impact has been. I know who I am. I know what I did at the Beautiful Project. I know what my images do. I've, been paid well. I've been paid not well. I understand my impact. I understand the business of my effect. I understand that I have a lot of possibility that I don't know in front of me. And so as far as pursuing gigs now, I have not pursued, that's not true. How I'm pursuing opportunities now is by hanging out with people.
Okay.
So I'm in an honest space around kind of like I'm expanding and I need you to talk. So any questions I have, I have a list of people. I made a list of people that I'm curious about. Some people that I know really well, some people that I don't. And I'm just honest with them in conversation, and I'm doing with them what several artists have done with me. and I was responsive to. And these folks have been responsive. So I'm letting, so to pursue other opportunities, I'm protecting my ability to be me. So by doing that project, like this is how I work, this is who I am, so that when I go to these other places, I have conversations around potential opportunities, who I am is obvious if you're looking, if you want to check up on me, but also I'm in recent conversation with who I am. I know how I work. I know what the considerations are in real time. And so continue to do my practice and then have conversations and kick it with people and ask honest questions. And opportunities are coming that are making me really excited.
I love that. I love that because it's like coming from, it's not like you're going out and searching for the next thing, at least initially, right? It's
Right.
more like the parameters are set by those experiences and conversations you're having with people that are raw, unfiltered. There's no big plan behind it when it starts out. And then
Right.
you're able to take that back in, kind of process those experiences and go, there it is.
Yep.
That's what I want to talk about next. I love that because it's not like you make the map and say, what shall I propose to a museum next? You know, like,
Right.
who do I think they may be interested. You're more going like, okay, I just went through all these different things. This is the one that just struck me right in the gut. This is the one. And then you expand from there. And then, like you said, it can have 20 tentacles. So got to put them back in the can or
Yep.
keep them
Yep.
under control. Set your parameters. And then you can go from there. And then you can present. Because also, the way you're explaining it, because you're taking that back and kind of having that time to, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not introvert, it's okay, I lost the word. But anyways, you're taking that time to process it, right? You're also going into that mode where you articulate what it is your objective actually is, which means even if your project's not finished and you're halfway, you can still go after opportunities with some
Yes.
examples of what it is, and then perhaps maybe get funding that way,
Right.
depending on who it's through, and then expand from there. I absolutely love that. I do want to ask you too, as we're talking about these different things. So I know you mentioned you check your map quarterly, which I love that because some folks I think forget to check in throughout the year and what they start out with, and then they get towards the end of the year and they go, I didn't meet anything, or I didn't hit all the goals. I don't know what happened, or they just detoured like completely off.
Right.
And yeah, anyways, that's kind of hard to get back. But long term, I know you're still trying to figure out like the more, micro view, but on a macro level, right? Bird's eye view, where are we headed? Is there like a big museum? You're like, I want to be in the Renwick Gallery, one of the Smithsonian's. Like, I want a giant exhibition where the people and the photographs are there. I want to be on TV. Like, come on, big dream, nothing impossible. If you could have it your way, what would be a nice, feels maybe a little uncomfortable, but you're still working towards it anyways, kind of long-term goal? Give me anything.
So this is really fun. I'll answer, and then if you don't like it, I can try again. Yeah. I'll give you my honest answer. I really adore where I'm at, right? Because you listed so many things that I've done already and that were a part of my dream and remain a part of my dream, right? Like and having accomplished so much, I realize I really like it. Not accomplishing, yes, that too, but like the way I do work, what I create, I really like it. I like the process. I like celebrating with the people and the images. I like it so much. And so I want that more. I want all of it more. And to do that, then I need to continue to learn more around my arts admin self, my photography self. So the sky's the limit. I'll be, in my own dark room, doing exceptionally large format photography.
Yeah.
And in really beloved, continuing and growing in really beloved relationship with arts administrators around the world, curators around the world, other artists around the world so that I can just keep on being me more. I want to be me more. I want to travel for fellowships and residencies. I want to continue to do this. I love the business side. I love the art side. My brain is very, very happy swimming between both. And so, I want to be where all of the curators who care to understand the nuances of identity and of people and of emotion. I want to be in the places that can hold my work well. I want to kick it and wear fabulous clothes to said receptions for the work. So yeah, I've already been such a intense and fantastic extreme, and I want that more. I want to be even more extreme. I want to be even more intense. I'd like to stay healthy during all of it and well, with the boundaries and clarity. But I really like me. I really like being in huge and fabulous museums, beloved and amazing centers. I want somebody to give me a building, not to keep the building, but I want my images on the side. I want some brick. Give me some brick. I want you to drive by and be like, what the heck? And pull over. So when y'all see me, my images on some brick, some buildings, somebody's street, just everywhere. I want huge. So I want all the things. I want me more. I want me more. I want to be in all the places as an artist.
I absolutely love that. And I think what is so motivating, aside from just hearing about all these ideas and all these big dreams, is that really at the core of it, that one phrase, like you want to be you more. And I think that's, as creatives, what we're all striving for, right? It's a process of continuing to understand ourselves, continuously filtering what is my view of the world, what are other people's views of the world, and how do they connect? And really making sure that as a business, if you keep you at the center of all of your decisions, of constantly checking in, does this feel right or does this not feel right? Why does it feel right or why does it not? And
Good.
always doing that self-assessment, then the map that you build will always lead you to somewhere where you want to go. I think especially as an early artist, that can be a trap that if you're unsure of who you are or still really intimidated by others in the industry or listening to this is what I'm quote unquote supposed to do, then they end up building maybe successful businesses financially or perceived success, but it doesn't feel right to them. And they're led in this path of building a business or building a creative practice that doesn't give that fulfillment, doesn't give that reward, and might make you feel even more lost than you did at the beginning of your process.
Yeah. Yeah. So true. So true.
Man, well, even with all of those ideas, is there something at the top of your mind that you wish you had done for your artist career, but haven't yet? It's okay if the answer is no.
Yet, that's on the bucket.
You said what?
Or someone you haven't photographed yet that's on the bucket list. Maybe it's a little easier.
No, there's a bunch of things that like I want to do, but like, I've always liked a good map, and it wasn't always on Milanote, and I don't even know if that's how you pronounce it, but it wasn't always on Milanote. But like I enjoy journals and whiteboards. I have 3 in my little studio that I'm in right now.
I love it.
And so there's things that I want to do. Like I can see series in my head, but it registers as something that like, oh, okay, let me try to do that now, as opposed to something, it doesn't register as something I wish I would have already done. Okay. There are things and opportunities that like, I wish I would have learned color darkroom photography. There was a real traumatic reason why I wasn't able to take that course,
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? So there was like the things that I want to do are really, and still dream of and would have loved to do before, have settled in my body and heart and brain as like okay, girl, well, how are we going to do it now? Because I still see those series where like, it's just like intense black and white and they're close-ups and it's all soul of like, civil rights activists or like the up and coming unknown activists now who are like just young, dope. You know what I mean? So I still see things that I want to do, in that way. I think there are two things that I was very excited about and had to actually fix with my partner. He was misunderstanding me, thinking that he was like, well, if this is what you want to do, we're going to move there so you can do it. I was like, no, I was just talking about my younger self. But National Geographic, because I went to Howard, so I was in DC. So National Geographic had a lot of internship opportunities that as an adult, I was kind of like, oh, there's different skills I would have come out of if I had done internships with those camera operators, right? And then also the one that's if they call now, then I'd pack everybody up for 2 weeks, maybe a month. But ESPN, oh, it's a soap opera. Oh, it's amazing. Boy, do they know how to tell a story. Now, behind the scenes, I don't know how it goes there, but let me tell you what. Well, we've heard different things, but long story long, they can tell a story.
Yeah.
Oh, ESPN. I play no sports. I only pick up on the emotional soap opera of that channel. Wow.
And talk about a dance that you're capturing. In action photographs or these crazy character arts over the career, and then there's an injury that comes out of nowhere.
You're crying.
Yeah.
You're laughing. You know what I mean? They got you. Like old school HBO when they used to do behind the scenes.
Yeah. It's larger than life profile.
Oh, my goodness.
Totally ridiculous.
Everything is monumental, and you're like,
everything's
this
monumental.
One missed catch, that changed everything, and you're like, it did, it did.
I think there was one with these 2 football teams. I'm gonna end up sounding like a fool right now. Somebody's gonna call me, but and it was over this tree. So I'm not gonna get into it. Look it up. I'm not gonna. I know what I remember in my head, but I'm not gonna get into it for all the fans. I'm just upset about this tree. I'm irate.
Yeah.
No. I'm from Maryland. I am not invested in this tree. And so Maryland likes trees, but the tree there had some specific significance. Anyhow, look at
there's something about it. Yeah. They just grab you.
It was 30 for 30. Anyhow, my point is ESPN. Wow. I think the director of photography is in my future at some point, but I think that's one of the things that I was going to go hard on. And it's still a really intense part of me. It's a filmmaker. But the reasons that I didn't make sense because they were external. But that is a thing that I'm I may end up in somebody's program or class.
Maybe. Yeah. Maybe someday.
Yeah.
Maybe when that map gets revalued, it gets put back in it. Some point.
No.
Yeah. Never know.
You could be watching ESPN and see
in the credits.
I love it.
That's amazing. Well, let me ask you. So I feel like as we talk about, your trajectory and everything else, you're not just a commercial photographer that does this as a job. You're an artist, at least humble opinion, right? As an artist, how do you define success? And it's a moving target, but at least
it is
right now. Or
as of right now, that's good. That's good. You're good. Because I was like, I don't know it. I've been thinking about this question, and what has kept coming up, what keeps coming up is, did I do what I set out to do? And if I didn't, what does that mean for me and how does it feel in my body? And that those questions, how I answer those questions tend to be how I define success. So did I do what I set out to do? And if it's yes, it's well, that's cool, right? And then I can start to feel the warmth spread in my chest. And if I didn't, then why and what does that mean for me? And if what does that mean for me is something that still feels like a soul connection, then I can almost reallocate it to there's almost 2 columns: success around I did what I set out to do, and wow, that's going to be more for me in my life. Or I didn't do what I set out to do. Oh, I've got something to grieve. Oh, but letting myself have the space. If I let myself have the space, then I get to go to finding my possibility. So those 2 things, when I'm able to do one of those 2, that's when I feel that's how I define success. If I can't do one of those two things, I feel out of sync and like I'm not connected to my own values and to how I view the world and to what I feel like I'm called to.
I love that. I think that's, as we're going back to like, yeah, definitely a mic drop moment. Definitely going back to that, constantly reevaluating, like, how does it connect to your larger purpose as a creative, as a person? And that's beautiful. Now, thinking back to your younger self, what is one piece of advice that you wish you had heard before you got started on this creative journey that you have up until this point?
Besides, charge more money.
Honestly, honey, you're going to be okay. This is hard. You're going to cry. It's going to feel like you got kicked in your chest, but that's not all that's going to be there. And it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. You got this. You got this. You got this. You got this. It's okay.
So good. I love that. The constant pep talks and just reassurance.
Yeah.
Oh, that is so
Younger
good.
me was a sweet girl.
Still a sweet girl. Still
Oh, thank you.
One of the questions that we ask everyone, especially as we wrap up the episode, is if you had $100 right now, what would you splurge it on? It has to be something that brings you joy, and it has to relate to your art or business.
Oh. I would go buy paper for the darkroom and rolls of film and my favorite developer.
Perfect. Very practical things. I love it. Reinvesting back into your craft. It's a great way to spend the money.
I don't have a darkroom yet, so I would just hoard it and hold it.
There you go. Start your Black Room raising fund. Love it. Awesome. Well, Jamaica, this has been such an amazing conversation. Before we wrap up, what upcoming opportunities are you looking forward to?
Oh, okay, so the series I was talking about, I've been working on now for, I think, a little over a year, is the Elders of the West End photography series. And that'll be in Durham, and it'll release in October at the community. Oh, I'm gonna jacket this up. Help me out. Okay, keep it. But at Lion Park Community Center, and there's a fuller, more lovely name that I will have better tomorrow. But at the Lion Park Community Center, that community center was originally a school. So this year is their centennial celebration, and we're using this exhibit to kick it off in October. And so the Lion Park School is just this amazing treasure in Durham, like the students who went there. And so several of the elders that I photographed were students at that school. So that's the thing I'm most excited about. That'll launch in October, and we'll release on the website how people can check it out. And I'll send you all that information too.
Awesome. We'll make sure to link that in the show notes for you, for all of our listeners to go and support you, see your work, and of course, stay in contact with you.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up this conversation, of course, we are very, very grateful that you joined us today. But before we go, how can listeners stay in contact with you and see your work? Where can we send them?
So I have a fancy website, JamaicaGilmer.com. Should you email me, it goes to me. So I'll see you on the interwebs. I'm also on Instagram at Jamaica Gilmer. And so I think that's about it. Other than that, you can check me out on the interwebs. I like press, so there should be some of that eventually.
Awesome. Well, Jamaica, thank you so much for taking time today. We really appreciate it. And thanks for sharing all of your great perspective and experience with our listeners.
Thank you for having me. This is wonderful.
Of course. As always, everything that we talked about in today's episode will be linked in the show notes, as well as Jamaica's contact information and links to our blog and other podcast episodes.
Yep. And if you want to stay connected with us in between episodes, share what you have learned, you can connect with Jackie and myself. I'm at May Art across all social media platforms.
And I'm at J Sanders Studio on all platforms. Or if you want to follow the podcast, we are at Level Up Artists on Instagram. Thank you so much for listening. We'll talk to you next week.